Hi everybody, I think that this is going to help you as you begin to write your outlines today. My recommendation is that as you finish each paragraph in the outline that you take a minute and listen to the correlating section of this recording to double check that you have completed that part of the outline correctly and that you've included all the important components of each paragraph. So, for example, as you finish the introduction paragraph, then I recommend that you listen to this recording up to the part where I write about here, where you are going to start your body paragraph. So after you finish your intro paragraph, listen to all of this about the intro paragraph and make sure that you have all the important components. Take a minute and read this part right here to yourself and stop the recording while you do that. This is your hook sentence that you just read about right here, starting with a quotation, maybe something from Brainy Quote, a question about decision making in president's tenure in office, a quick little story, even interesting fact would work well. Now take a minute to read about the funnel introduction and stop the recording while you're doing that. These introductory sentences link your hook to your thesis, and pretty much they explain the concept that presidents in general need to make decisions in their careers, and that sometimes the means that they go through to reach their goals, which are the ends, are justified, are worth it. And sometimes, the nation thinks that they aren't worth it. And, this will just bring up this concept in general that presidents have to go through this. And it will lead you into decision-making specifically for your 3 presidents you're going to focus on in your thesis statement. Your thesis statement definitely needs to bring up your 3 presidents, Washington, Jefferson, and Jackson. However, it does not need to bring up the specific topics that you're going to talk about for each of those 3 presidents. So, for example, if you're going to discuss the Whiskey Rebellion with George Washington, you don't need to mention the Whiskey Rebellion in the thesis statement. You just need to say that George Washington had presidential decisions that he had to make, and whether or not you believe that the ends justified the means for his presidential decision. You'll expand on that with the Whiskey Rebellion or whatever topic you chose in the first body paragraph. So just to recap on what your thesis statement should include, your thesis statement definitely needs to have these parts. It needs to bring up the concept of presidents making decisions, and it needs to bring up your 3 specific presidents and whether for each one, whether the ends do justify the means in relation to a decision that he has made. Finally, just read this last part on useful tips again and stop the recording while you do that. Okay, so now that you have double-checked your outline to make sure that you have all the components of an introduction, go ahead and write your first body paragraph, and after you have done so, take a look at the next section here in this recording about body paragraph reminders. Okay, by now hopefully you have written at least one of your body paragraphs. So take a minute now to read this section on what your body paragraph topic sentence only should include. Stop the recording while you do that. Okay, when you look at your own topic sentence, your topic sentence of each body paragraph really is pretty difficult to write and needs to include a lot. Here's why. It needs to transition from the paragraph before it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Additionally, it needs to state the main idea of your paragraph, which means the president you're talking about in that paragraph and the topic or decision that that president had to make. For example, Jefferson, and his decision was he was going to end slavery. Additionally, you need to relate it back to your thesis statement. The thesis is that some presidents' ends justify the means and some don't. So for this particular president, for example, Jefferson, did the ends or did not the ends justify the means it took to get there? Now take a minute and read this section about body paragraphs. This is what you'll do after your topic sentence. Stop the recording while you read this. So after you write your topic sentence for your first body paragraph, the rest of the body paragraph will include a quick summary of that topic, for example, a quick summary of slavery at that point in time. It will discuss the means taken by that president to reach the goal, for example, what Jefferson did in his attempts to stop slavery. It will then discuss the ends that that president succeeded in achieving. For example, Jefferson did make strides to abolish slavery, and then whether or not and why you think the ends justified the means for that particular example. Finally, you'll just end with a basic conclusion sentence to sum up the paragraph. Go ahead and just take a minute to read this section about deeper understanding of your details and stop the recording while you read it. Okay, we're still talking about your first body paragraph, but we want to talk about how you add a transition in the topic sentence of each body paragraph. A transition means that you're connecting the idea from the previous paragraph to the main idea of the current paragraph that you're in. Take a minute for me, please, to read this section and right here and stop the recording while you do that. So again, this transition happens in the topic sentence of body paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. We're only dealing with transitioning in body paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. So in body paragraph 1, you need to connect your main idea of your first president to the intro paragraph. And a good way to do that is either to add a word, like a transition word, or to repeat something from the previous paragraph. For your first body paragraph, the way to go is to do a word addition. And what I mean by that is to use one of these words down below that transitions us into our first example of George Washington. The ones I put in boldface down in this box are the ones that I think would work the best for this essay. So a good transition to introduce George Washington to bring us from the introductory paragraph into the first paragraph could be something like the word early. I know that says earlier, but maybe you say something like, early in our country's history, George Washington became our first president and had to make many important decisions, such as how to handle the Whiskey Rebellion. And you would have to add to that topic sentence, of course, whether or not you thought the means were justified by the ends. But the word early is a transition that brings us into our first example of George Washington. When you would transition from the first body paragraph, Washington, to the second body paragraph, Jefferson, in the topic sentence of your second body paragraph, you will have to connect Washington into your new example of Jefferson. A good way to do that might be after or later. So you could say 3 terms later, or maybe it's 2 terms later, Thomas Jefferson became our third president. And he, too, made important decisions, etc., 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 where you would bring up the decision, the specific topic of the decision he made, and whether or not you thought the end justified the means. Finally, you need a transition in your third body paragraph in the topic sentence where you are introducing the third president, Andrew Jackson. So you are transitioning from Thomas Jefferson to Andrew Jackson in the beginning of the third body paragraph. A good word for a good transition for that might be finally. I know I didn't put that into boldface. But another good one might be on the contrary, because a lot of you are going to say finally with Andrew Jackson that the ends did not justify the means. So you could say on the contrary, our seventh president, Andrew Jackson, made decisions like shutting down the federal bank, and the ends did not justify the means. So on the contrary or in contrast are good ones to use if you are in your next body paragraph going to talk about how suddenly the ends did or did not justify the means, and it's different from what you said in the previous paragraph. Finally, in the conclusion paragraph, just take a minute to read. This part's pretty easy about this right here and stop the recording while you do. I think you're pretty familiar what to do in this part of the essay. However, just the so what part is always a little bit difficult for you guys. Really think, how does this impact our future? How does this impact future presidents' decisions? How does this impact the understanding that the nation has when it comes to critiquing presidents' decisions? Think about how important it is for us to look at decision-making in history so that we don't make the same bad decisions again, and so that we do continue to make good decisions that were made in the past.